Hey everybody, it's Nicholas Rogers with the Big Timber Lodge coming back at you live from the beautiful state of Colorado in my basement battle cab, and I'm live streaming tonight for X America News. Howdy to everybody out there in the Xmosphere. And boy, do we got a show for you tonight. We're going to be covering a lot of things revolving around the Second Amendment and some major victories that we've had in the past couple of days as far as the Department of Justice cutting off funds to grants that have been funding gun control lobbyist groups in D.C. that have been pushing those funds into the United States for years. So thank you, Pam Bondi, for that. We're going to get to that here shortly. We're also going to cover the governor of Montana, who threw shade at Governor Polis in Colorado for all of their unconstitutional gun control laws that they have been enacting recently. And he did it in such a fantastic way. I can't wait to get to that portion. Also, we have some new news about Colorado SB 25003, which is actually the gun control law that Governor Polis signed into effect April 10th, which is why the governor of Montana threw shade at Polis. And it's some information that I definitely want to share with you. Additionally, I also want to talk about House Bill 25-13-14 here in Colorado, where Colorado is looking to create law enforcement agents out of the Colorado Department of Revenue so that they can actually go inside sheriff's jurisdictions that claim Colorado counties are 2A sanctuary counties and make arrests of Colorado FFLs. So let's go ahead and let's jump right into it, folks. I hope you're having a wonderful Saturday night on this beautiful evening here from the great state of Colorado and wherever you are. So first up is an article from the Washington Post. Let me actually go with a full screen on this. It says the Department of Justice cancels grants for gun violence and addiction prevention victim advocacy. Of course, this is from a liberal legacy rag of a publication. So anything that the Trump administration or Pam Bondi or the Department of Justice does is always going to get a negative slant from a publication like this. And you can just pick up on it from the title. Way to go, Perry Stein, the author. So this was just published 3 days ago, and we're just going to go through a couple of the paragraphs here. It says the Justice Department has abruptly canceled hundreds of grants to community organizations and local governments, including funding for gun violence prevention programs and crime victim advocacy. Cuts Attorney General Pam Bondi defended Wednesday as the elimination of millions of dollars in wasteful spending. Oof. Okay. So they're making it sound like this is going to stop crime prevention, gun violence is going to increase. And there's another publication right here that I wanted to cover with you that just put this article out on April 24th, so 2 days ago. And this is from the Giffords group, okay? So Gabby Gifford is a representative. She is a former congresswoman who was attacked in one of her rallies by a deranged individual with a firearm, and she survived the attack. And since then, she has created a hyper-aggressive gun control lobbyist group with her husband. And they published an article just a couple of days ago saying reckless Trump Department of Justice cuts will immediately increase violent crime. President Trump's Department of Justice canceled hundreds of ongoing grants to on-the-ground community violence intervention organizations. Cuts will kick violence interrupters off the job, cause gun homicides to spike across the country. So they are really fear-mongering with the fact that our Department of Justice is cutting off these funds. And we're going to get to what those funds truly are here in a second. I just want to read a couple of the paragraphs from this article. So Washington, the Giffords, the National Gun Violence Prevention Organization founded by former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, released the following statement on the Trump administration's rescindment of millions of dollars of grants to local gun violence prevention and crime reduction programs. Folks, it's a lot more than millions of dollars, and we're going to get to that here shortly. Also included were cuts to domestic violence assistance programs and drug addiction intervention programs, and we'll cover why that's an important footnote right there. The administration claims grants were terminated in part because they want to focus on protecting American children, yet the leading cause of death of American children and young people is gun violence. Folks, that is a bold-faced lie. That is a bold-faced lie. So the Giffords Group is one of the groups responsible for changing what the age range for children is in the United States when it comes to firearms death. When you think children, you're thinking of 1 or 0 through 17, right? Minors. That's a child by legal definition, okay? What they have done is they have increased the age range to include 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, which are some of the highest rates of suicide as well as gang violence when it comes to firearms deaths. So they are changing what the definition is of children so that they can fit a narrative with their bogus statistics. Additionally, too, none of these people actually want to talk about what's the number one killer of children in America. And I'm going to go full screen with this one really quick and pull up my chat. Howdy, Wolverines. Wolverines! If you're new to the Big Timber Lodge, we are freedom fighters here in the state of Colorado fighting against an oppressive, authoritarian government up in Denver, led by the head communist himself, Governor Jared Polis, who is trying to strip away not just our Second Amendment rights, but all of our civil liberties. And that'll be a discussion for another day. But anyways, Wolverines! But if we're talking about the number one cause of children's death in America, it's abortion, especially here in the state of Colorado. The last published statistics of an annual rate of abortion in Colorado was for 2023, provided by the Colorado Department of Health, and it was over 14,000 aborted children. The same year, we had a 16.6 per 100,000 people per capita death rate by all firearm-related injuries, and we had 5.9 million people in the state of Colorado. And that means we had less than 1,000, around 980 firearm-related deaths in the state of Colorado in the year of 2023. And if you compare that to the over 14,000 aborted children, and also you have to think in Colorado, you can abort a child up to the day of delivery. It could be the day that your wife or your girlfriend is supposed to give birth. She can give birth to that child and say, I don't want it, and they will let it die on the table. That is how extreme Colorado is. And that's one of the reasons why I bring this up. Anytime they say that firearms are the leading cause of death in children in America, that is a bullshit statistic, and they know it because abortion is. Sorry. Had to go on a little bit of a sidebar there. I'm very passionate about it. I have 2 children myself. My family and I love the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and we believe all life is sacred. So back to the discussion screen. All right. Okay. It's not an exaggeration to say that pulling violence intervention workers out of communities will lead to an immediate surge in violence. People will die. Brave intervention workers help bring down violent crime rates and ensure more young people make it home safe each night. And law enforcement benefits greatly when these efforts are part of a coordinated, comprehensive strategy, said Paul Carrillo, who leads the Giffords Center for Violence Intervention. That's the portion where I wanted to end on this. So what they're talking about is state and local level gun control efforts that we are seeing pop up in all of these blue and purple states across the nation. And they say that local law enforcement benefits greatly from this. I interviewed the El Paso County, Colorado sheriff yesterday, Sheriff Roybal, who his county in Colorado is the most populated county in the whole state. As far as numbers go, he is the big dog when it comes to sheriffs in the state of Colorado. And you will see my interview with him after my episode for the Big Timber Lodge. I filled in as a guest host yesterday for a pre-recorded episode for the Second Syndicate, and that episode will be playing directly after mine. Now, Sheriff Roybal said on camera he prefers for law-abiding citizens to be able to exercise their Second Amendment rights as easily as possible. His words go directly against what this Paul Carrillo is saying with the Giffords Group. And folks, this is important to talk about because the Department of Justice is cutting off the funding that's going to these federal grants that these gun control lobbyist groups have been siphoning off of our tax dollars for decades. How much money do you think they've been siphoning off? Well, let's go to this article right here, which is from the BradyUnited.org website. So it says Brady condemns Trump's administration cataclysmic and inhumane cut in federal funding. President Trump's sweeping decision to indefinitely suspend federal grant funding jeopardizes $13 billion in bipartisan funding for police, safe storage, suicide prevention, school safety, and more. $13 billion of our federal taxes have been going to grant programs that anti-gun, gun control lobbyist groups like Brady or the Giffords, or my favorite, Everytown for Gun Safety, which is a Michael Bloomberg gun control lobbyist group out of D.C., which has caused the biggest pain in our ass here in the state of Colorado, have been siphoning off of a $13 billion grant fund to push gun control at the state and local levels. Folks, let's have a quick talk up close and personal about this, because I have done investigative research about this, about the Bloomberg group Everytown for Gun Safety. Literally on their website, they have a how to take advantage of billions of dollars in federal grants to get common sense gun control put into place where you live. They literally have figured out, or they had figured out, a way to get a hold of federal tax dollars and money launder it through 5013Cs, NGOs, NEOs into their gun control lobbyist groups. And not only are they pushing for gun control, they are actually paying for campaigns for anti-gun politicians around the nation. Don't believe me? Just look in Colorado. In the last senator election that happened in 2022, Everytown for Gun Safety utilized $2.7 million in a state level election to get anti-gun politicians elected. They spent $1 million alone ensuring that State Senator Tom Sullivan would be elected in Colorado. Now, you might have heard that name before. He unfortunately lost his son in the 2012 theater shooting in Aurora, Adam. And since then, he has made it his life goal to make firearm ownership as restrictive and difficult as possible in the state of Colorado. I feel bad for him for losing his son, but what he is doing to the state is beyond illegal. It is downright evil, and he knows it. And I believe, this is just my personal opinion, this is not the opinion of Ex-America News, is that he has gotten so used to power, he is willing to take whatever bill that Everytown for Gun Safety gives him, as long as they keep him in his position. Because originally in Colorado, when they first announced SB 25003 was coming to our state, he was the main sponsor. It was made out as if Senator Sullivan himself wrote the bill. After I did some investigative research, we found out the bill actually came from Everytown for Gun Safety, once again, a Bloomberg lobbyist group in Washington, D.C. And just recently, Washington, or I can't remember the name of the newspaper. It's the, whatever. It's a newspaper that does a lot of stuff about our economy. What's the name of that? You all know in chat. Anyways, they exposed that the true author of SB 25003 didn't come from Colorado, did not come from Washington Journal. That's it. did not come from Colorado, nor did it come from DC. Instead, it was written by a policy attorney for Everytown for Gun Safety named Allison Shy, and she lives in Chicago, Illinois. So Everytown for Gun Safety has been siphoning off of this $13 billion grant fund to pay for attorneys, policy writers, to pay for politicians to be put into position of power around this nation so that they then will push these anti-gun legislative efforts forward to reduce our ability to enjoy the Second Amendment. And folks, that should make you extremely angry, but hats off to Pam Bondi's Department of Justice for finally cutting off these federal grants from going to nationwide gun control efforts, folks. They have been using our own tax dollars against us. Think about that. Think about that. If you live in a pro 2A community, and let's say you're a blue collar worker, and you believe in our Bill of Rights, our Constitution, you believe that our constitutional rights are inalienable rights that come from God. They don't come from man. They don't come from government. And let's say you don't make enough money to be able to donate to the campaign of the politician that you would like to see elected. Don't worry, because you're still donating to a politician during that election. It's just the politician you don't want to win. Organizations like Brady, Giffords, and Everytown for Gun Safety have been laundering money from these federal grants into their general cash funds and using that money to get anti-gun politicians elected. And I say no more. No more. So thank you, DOJ, for stopping that. Now it's going to be real interesting moving forward into future elections to see what happens now that the USAID funds have been cut off, as well as these federal grants have now been cut off, whether or not we will see campaigns financed for individuals like Senator Sullivan here in Colorado through Everytown for Gun Safety, if now they aren't able to take the hard-earned tax dollars from blue-collar Americans that want their 2A rights. Oof, folks, this is good news. Really good news for us. Absolutely great news for us. All right, so what do we got going on next? A little bit kind of let's transfer over into a little bit of a positive segment, right? Which I think is kind of funny. That was not funny what happened with the DOJ, but it was a much needed good first step in the right direction to start protecting our 2A rights in the nation, and also to let Americans know that their hard-earned taxes aren't going to be going to these anti-gun lobbyist groups anymore. Okay, so let's get into the Montana throwing shade on Colorado here portion. All right, let me go back to a full screen share. This is from Newsweek, okay? This article was published in June of 2024, so a little less than a year ago, and it was provided by the Giffords Law Group, okay? And right here is a map that says which states have the strictest gun laws. Now, granted, Newsweek, once again, is a liberal legacy rag publication. They hate your constitutional rights. They hate the fact that you have the right to free speech, the right to freedom of religion, the right to freedom of firearms and to bear arms. They hate all of that, right? They hate your rights. So, of course, their rating scale, right? Because if I were to be rating this, California would be bright red, right? They would have the strictest gun laws, meaning they would be bright red. Instead, Newsweek makes this map so that California is bright green, like green is good, right? So let's take a look over here at Colorado. Colorado has the 10th ranking. So they're saying Colorado has the, as of last year, we have now bumped up in the rankings since SB 25003 and House Bill 1133, which is the ammunition and hand loading regulation bill. And also the gun show bill has passed through and has more gun laws passed this year, we are going to see Colorado move up in the rankings of the strictest gun control in this nation. Possibly we're going to see Colorado end up in the top 3. That's where I end up thinking we're going to end up, because currently we've already had 3 new gun control bills passed this year, the 3 that I just mentioned, and there's 6 more that are headed to Governor Polis's desk right now. And if those 6 pass, it's going to make the 2A right community in Colorado be very difficult to exercise their freedoms. But anyways, Colorado, according to this map, was ranked 10th. So 10th strictest state when it comes to gun control laws. California, no surprise, was ranked number 1. But what about Montana? Montana, being bright red, was ranked 45th state for strictest gun control laws, meaning there are only 5 other states that have less strict gun control laws than Montana. And I believe after this legislative session with Montana, Montana is actually going to be moving down that list to even being more of a free state when it comes to 2A rights. And I just wanted to share this with you so you could have an understanding of where the governor of Montana is coming from in this next video. All right, so this is the governor of Montana. He just put this out himself a couple of days ago. This is amazing.
Last week, the Democrat governor of Colorado signed into law one of the most restrictive gun bans ever adopted in the United States. The law bans the manufacturing and selling of semi-automatic firearms. This is on top of the liberal state's existing ban on high-capacity magazines. That's just crazy. If you needed another sign that Democrat governors are out of touch with reality, well, here it is. Colorado is ranked in the top 10 states with the biggest gun industries. So, to all gun manufacturers in Colorado, my question for you is simple. Do you want to move back to America? Montana is open for business and home to more than 150 firearms and ammunition manufacturers, the highest per capita in the entire country. We are a constitutional carry state that has enacted laws outlawing discrimination against gun and ammunition manufacturers. In Montana, we embrace freedom and the free enterprise system. Come on home to America, right here in Montana.
Damn. Do you want to move back to America? That is my favorite line in that video. And he brings up a good point, because there's a portion of SB 25003, the bill that Governor Polis just signed into law. Now, granted, it doesn't go into effect until August of 2026. There is an anti-manufacturing clause in there where it says you cannot manufacture. So did Colorado just shoot themselves in the foot and lose 150 firearm manufacturers literally right down the street from my house? I live in Colorado Springs, but right down the street from my house is Denver Ammunition. And it's an ammunition manufacturing company that was up in Denver for decades. It was one of Colorado's oldest ammunition stores in Colorado, in the whole state. But due to Denver's policies with firearms and ammunition, they ended up keeping the name of the company, but they moved down to Colorado Springs, and they're literally like a mile from my house. Are they not going to be able to manufacture ammunition? Are gun makers that are here in the state not going to be able to manufacture? Are gunsmiths not going to be able to manufacture or work on firearms if they are part of the banned list of SB 25003? That's why the governor of Montana is courting these manufacturers and these businesses. And it's a smart play, because the governor of Montana is Republican. The majority of Montana is Republican. There are a few light blue strongholds in the state of Montana, but the majority of Montana is ruby red. I believe all of their Congress, all of their Senate, and their governor is Republican. And I have actually asked the governor of Montana to come on to my show. So if y'all know him, please reach out to him and ask him to come on to the Big Timber Lodge. Because actually one of my favorite towns in North America is actually in Montana. It's called Red Lodge, Montana. It's just north of the Wyoming border, right over the side of Yellowstone, the north side of Yellowstone. You go over the Beartooth Pass and then down into this little mountain town called Red Lodge, and it's absolutely one of my favorite places to visit. It's a conservative town. It has a brewery. It's got an old main street, and they love motorcyclists. They love veterans, and every time I ride up there on my bike, they let me camp in the parking lot in a tent of the brewery, and it's always a good time. So I love Red Lodge, Montana. If I could move to Red Lodge, Montana, I would. And that's not since this video came out. That's actually, one of my favorite towns, and it has been for decades. So I just think it's kind of hilarious, though, that the governor of Montana is throwing shade not just on Governor Polis, but also on all Democratic governors. He said that. He said this, if you needed proof that Democratic governors are out of touch, this is it. And he's absolutely right. I mean, he's talking about it from a business standpoint right here, right? Colorado has a massive amount of firearms industry in this state. And with the stroke of a pen, Governor Polis essentially killed it all, right? And that's why the governor of Montana is saying, hey, you want to move back to America? We will embrace you. Now, this kind of does remind me of back in like the 90s when Rick Perry, it was Rick Scott. Who was the governor of Texas back in the 90s, in the late 90s, early 2000s? Whoever the governor was, he went out to California and kind of did the same thing in California, asking, businesses to come to Texas because of, the lower business taxes and a friendlier environment. And he actually ended up getting a whole bunch of California businesses to move to Texas. And it helped the Texas economy, but it was also kind of the start of the political shift in Texas to go from more conservative towards a moderate. I'm not going to say Texas is liberal. Texas is definitely conservative. We've seen more red politicians actually elected in the last couple of elections than the previous elections. So they're trending red, but there is a concern that in the liberal strongholds, there's a chance that they potentially could turn Texas purple and eventually blue. I don't know if that's going to happen. Rick Perry, yeah, I think that was it. No, Rick Perry, wasn't he the lead singer of was it Rick Perry? Yeah, I think it was Rick Perry. I can't remember. I'd have to look it up. No, I'm thinking of Steve Perry was the lead singer of Journey. Don't stop believing. But anyways, I just have a cautionary tale just for the governor of Montana. Just be careful what types of businesses that you invite to your state. Now, granted, I think firearm manufacturers and also ammunition manufacturers are a safe bet that it's not going to change your political landscape. But I do know for a fact that back when Rick Perry invited all the Californians into Texas, I had a friend of mine, her name was Kay out of New Braunfels, told me that the real estate boom around the Hill District in Austin exploded because you had Californians selling their houses for like $1 million, even back, 20 plus years ago, and then moving to Texas where they could buy a house that was 3 times the size for just several $100,000 and then still have $700,000 left over. And they're like, what do I do with this money? And she's like, I don't know, just, buy another house or invest it. And so that was one of the reasons why we started to see the housing boom and the price go up in the Austin area. And then it spread out to the other major metropolitan areas of Texas. So just be careful when you're inviting business to your state and what state it's coming from, because Montana is a fairly expensive state to live in. We have looked at the statistics, especially around Bozeman, and I believe that the cost of living in Bozeman is actually more than the cost of living in Denver. So I did want to bring up some interesting stuff, folks. So he was making light of Polis signing SB 25003 into law, and I found out yesterday, and let me know in chat if you were aware of this, but I found out yesterday that the fingerprint portion to get your Colorado firearms owner identification card has actually been removed from SB 25003. And I was unaware of that. I believe even Sheriff Roybal, you'll see in the interview that I did with him yesterday, was unaware of this as well. I actually had an insider reach out to me telling me that in the final SB 25003 document that Governor Polis signed on April 10th, they removed the fingerprint portion. So we're going to have a quick look at the bill that Polis signed. Let's go ahead and bring this up. Okay, so this is actually SB 25003. It says it right there, Senate Bill 3. Let me go ahead and zoom in on this one. And I'm going to look up finger, right? It's not in the bill anymore. What about fingerprint? Not anymore. Okay, let's see. What about just print? Okay. No, it's not in there anymore. What about background? Okay. So the portion that had your requirements to do the fingerprints, right? Because originally with SB 25003, when they included the COID amendment, you were going to have to go to your sheriff's department and be fingerprinted not once, but twice. You were going to have to be fingerprinted. They were going to send those fingerprints off to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. They were going to utilize your fingerprint for a state level background check. And then they were also going to send it off to the feds as well for a federal background check. But in this section, excuse me, right here, of SB 25003, they have replaced the fingerprint portion with the results of a completed name-based background check of national and Colorado public criminal history and judicial database completed by a third-party vendor that conducts those checks as a normal part of the vendor's business. So this is really good news for us here in Colorado because it means we aren't going to have to be fingerprinted twice just to be able to purchase our firearms owner identification card and exercise our constitutional right to purchase constitutionally protected items. So this is a major win for us, folks. I definitely wanted to share this with you and let you know that this portion has replaced the fingerprint portion in the Colorado COID card portion. Now, if you are not aware of what's also going on in the state of Colorado, I just testified to the Colorado Senate earlier this week, against House Bill 251314. Now, this bill right here is letting you know that our Colorado government out of Denver does not trust our elected law enforcement agencies around the state, being our sheriff's departments. And I had a really long talk with Sheriff Roybal about this particular bill in my interview that I did with him yesterday. So make sure you stay tuned for X America News with the Second Syndicate when I interview him to hear what his thoughts were on House Bill 251314, which is kind of funny because now they're calling it the peace officer status for certain Department of Revenue employees. It was originally written targeting the automobile industry here in Colorado. But like all good liberal progressives do, is they take a bill that seems innocuous, pretty benign, right? Something that actually makes sense. And then they gut it. And then they add in the true text that they wanted the whole time, so it flies under people's radar. And that's exactly what they did with House Bill 251314. And I'm going to just read you what the summary is right here, and we're going to jump into this so you can understand how vicious and sick this bill truly is. And it's already passed through the House. It already passed through the Senate Finance Committee, and now it's going to the Senate floor. And if it passes through there, it's going to go to Governor Polis for a signature. So it says right here, current law grants peace officer status to an auto industry investigator and the director of the auto industry division within the Department of Revenue. Department of Revenue, by the way, folks, these are the people that deal with like driver's licenses and state licenses. Oh, you need to get your, you want to sell alcohol or tobacco or marijuana in Colorado. You've got to go through the Department of Revenue to get your license. Okay, that's who we're talking about here. This is not a law enforcement agency. These are finance nerds that we're talking about. All right, current law grants peace officer status to an auto industry investigator and the director of the auto industry division within the Department of Revenue. Current law limits the scope of peace officer authority for these two positions to certain investigative and enforcement functions. The bill expands the peace officer authority for the auto industry investigator and auto industry division director positions to include enforcement of all laws of the state and require the investigators and director to be peace officer standards and training board certified, which is post board certified. So what they're talking about doing, right? They already have investigative officers, right, in the Department of Revenue for like the automobile industry that can go and do an investigation, but they're not armed. Okay. They're not truly law enforcement officers. until this bill gets passed, and then they will become post-board certified. Post-board certified, in layman's term in Colorado, is what all of our full-time law enforcement officers, whether it's police officers, state troopers, or sheriffs, have to undergo when it goes with training to become a law enforcement officer. That's legitimate law enforcement officer training, and to be certified, right? You have to renew your training. You have to do qualifications, all of this stuff in order to be post-board certified. All right, so it says the bill extends peace officer status along with the expanding authority and post-board certification requirements to agents in charge, criminal investigator supervisors, and criminal investigators within the auto industry division. So you're probably sitting there shaking your head or scratching your head wondering, what does this have to do with Second Amendment or FFLs? We're about to get to this portion. This is the portion that was amended into the bill. This is the true guts of the bill that they were hiding when they first introduced it. And they wanted to get this in. And a lot of people were unaware of this bill. Actually, one of my good friends here in Colorado, her name is Leslie Hollywood, was one of the few people that found out about this. She is also the owner of Rally for Our Rights, which is a pro 2A organization here in the state of Colorado. And she found out about this and brought it to my attention. I went on a live stream and I broadcasted, hey, this is happening. And literally that night, they announced that there was going to be a Senate finance hearing the very next day. And I got as many people to go and testify. I testified myself. And of course, Colorado Senate Finance passed it. And we'll get to that here real shortly. So it says House Bill 24-1353 created a new firearms dealer division. So they're talking about a bill that went into effect last year or was signed into law last year. So House Bill 24-1353 created a new firearms dealer division within the department. The bill designates the division director and deputy director as peace officers who may be post-board certified. The bill makes agents in charge, criminal investigators, supervisors, and criminal investigators in the division peace officers who must be post-board certified. Okay, let's take a break from reading and have a face-to-face on what's going on with this. So Colorado created this Colorado Bureau of Investigation to be able to investigate Colorado FFLs last year, because last year they passed a bill into law saying that if you are a federal firearms licensed dealer in the state of Colorado, in order to sell firearms or items that require an FFL, you now also have to be a Colorado firearms licensed dealer as well. So they created this Colorado Bureau of Investigation department to oversee the Colorado firearms licensees. Okay. Now, those licensees or those CBI folks can go in and investigate a firearm store and decide that, oh, hey, they're breaking Colorado gun laws, and they can reach out to the Department of Revenue, who then can pull their license, right? But that wasn't enough for the state, because recently, with everything that's been going on with Colorado Senate Bill 25003, we've seen, I believe, the last count, 36 counties with the county commissioners and also the sheriffs from those counties come out in opposition of Governor Polis's gun ban, SB 03, and say that my county, our county, is going to be a 2A sanctuary county, and we will not enforce SB 03 and other unconstitutional gun laws. Well, Colorado government did not like that, and they actually introduced this bill right at the very end of March, and it made its way through the House in 3 days with the amendment added to it during those 3 days. And what that amendment does is it's going to create an armed task force that is post-board certified underneath the Department of Revenue, so that those armed agents can usurp the jurisdiction of our county sheriffs here in Colorado and make arrests. Now, I highly recommend that you watch that interview that I did with Sheriff Roybal. It's going to be happening after this video on X America News, and you can see what his thoughts were about this, because this is kind of an interesting an interesting tactic that Colorado is using, because what exactly is CDOR, or the Colorado Department of Revenue, and how did they get this authority? Well, right here off of the Colorado Department of Revenue website, it says about CDOR. The Department of Revenue has over 1,500 employees that provide services to the people of Colorado through the Colorado Lottery, Division of Motor Vehicles, Marijuana Enforcement Division, Specialized Business Groups, Tobacco, Racing, Gaming, and Liquor and Tobacco Enforcement, and Taxation Division. They're literally the department that deals with giving people licenses to operate businesses that require licenses. They also deal with the Department of Motor Vehicle. Okay? These are finance nerds, is who they are. Why now are they getting an armed task force under them to be able to usurp the highest law enforcement in the land when it comes to the county? And if the state has an issue with the business, right? If CBI, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, which is there to oversee our Colorado FFLs to make sure they're not breaking the law, were to send in an agent into a gun store and witness a crime or do an investigation and find a crime that would be punishable with an arrest and a serious charge, they are supposed to reach out to the local sheriff's department and say, hey, we have evidence that a crime was committed. We need you to show up and make an arrest, right? That's how the community works. That's how state level government is supposed to interact with the local level government, okay? Now, I want you to understand what authority they are actually granting these law enforcement officers that will be falling underneath the Department of Revenue. So right here, Law Enforcement Authority. This is from the Colorado.gov website. And this explains all of their powers, including right here in 100.3.1, arrest authority within the jurisdiction of the Colorado Department of Revenue. The arrest authority within the jurisdiction of Colorado Department of Revenue includes post-certified peace officers. This is going to grant Department of Revenue employees full law enforcement authority when it comes to making an arrest. Section A, in compliance with an arrest warrant. Section B, when any crime is being or has been committed in a peace officer's presence. And the one that concerns me is C, when there is probable cause to believe that an offense was committed by the person to be arrested. Our state, especially the state level government that the Department of Revenue falls under, already has a very unfavorable view of our Second Amendment rights here in the state of Colorado. They have a very unfavorable view of Colorado federal firearms licensed dealers that sell Coloradans legal firearms. One of the state sponsors, Senator Gonzalez, during the Senate floor testimony, straight up said when it came to SB 25003, she didn't care if that bill shut down gun shops in Colorado. I'm just sharing that information with you so you can know what the mentality is of our state government that will be in charge of the Department of Revenue and this new law enforcement task force that they are going to be standing up. And not only did they stand it up in retaliation or opposition to the fact that we now have county commissioners and sheriffs saying that their counties are going to be 2A sanctuary counties because they want to be able to arrest these FFLs. They want to be able to intimidate these FFLs. Instead of sending in an unarmed investigator, they want to be able to send in an armed agent. We are talking bulletproof vests, probably a machine gun, a sidearm, and a chip on their shoulder the size of Minnesota. Just looking for an excuse to make an arrest. And as I explained, if one of these agents, these investigators that weren't armed, had gotten a tip that a firearm store in Colorado was operating outside of the rule of law, then they should contact the local sheriff's department, and that sheriff's department will comply with an investigation. A lot of our FFLs in Colorado have a really good standing with the sheriff's department. You might not know that, but a lot of gun stores are good friends with the police and the sheriff's department. It makes sense. But now Colorado is saying we no longer care about that community relationship. We no longer care about the jurisdiction of that county that belongs to the sheriff. We are creating our own Gestapo, our own bootjack thugs that do not respond well with the community. Because remember, sheriffs are elected officials. They are creating an unelected law enforcement agency to do what our elected law enforcement agency is in place to do. How messed up is that, folks? And also, this is the part that kills me. And this is what I testified about is when I was looking at the bill as it passed out of the House and it was headed to the Senate Finance Committee hearing. I looked at the fiscal note. $0 price tag associated with this bill. They don't even have the agents for this bill yet. And even if they did, they are going to have to be post-board certified, which means extensive law enforcement training. And I believe the Department of Revenue official, if I remember correct, back to the Senate Finance hearing, said that they were looking to hire 30 agents or Department of Revenue employees were going to become law enforcement officers. That is 30 post-board certification programs we are going to have to fund. That is 30 agents that we are going to have to equip with bulletproof vests, firearms, ammunition, training, reoccurring training, qualification training, a place to store their firearms, probably vehicles, leadership. And the state assigned it a $0 fiscal note. Why would the state assign it a $0 fiscal note? Well, that's because Governor Polis said earlier this year, I will not sign a bill into law that costs the state any money this year because we are facing a $1.2 billion deficit with our budget. When he said that, that gave us a lot of hope earlier in this legislative session that we wouldn't see a lot of these bills become law. But in their backdoor meetings, they've said, use whatever means necessary to make it as if these bills will not cost the taxpayers money. That's one of the reasons why they didn't do a cost analysis for SB 03 with the investigative background portion that the sheriff's department is going to do. They said, well, that's not going to be on the taxpayer, that's going to be on the county. Give me a break. Having to plus up your staff to do background investigations is going to cost the county money, which is the taxpayer. So there was really no hope when I looked at the fiscal note and it said $0, even though that makes 0 cents. And it looks like it's going to pass through the Senate and it's going to get to Governor Polis's desk. And more than likely, because we have over half the counties in Colorado in opposition, declaring themselves 2A sanctuary counties here in this great state of Colorado, from these oppressive, unconstitutional gun control measures. Our state government can't fathom the idea of allowing our rural communities to rule themselves and live with the spirit of the West in the heritage of our state. No, they are demanding and going to enforce their metropolitan, communist, authoritarian rule from their ivory towers in Denver to all four corners of this state. Folks, this is going to lead to a massive showdown between our counties, our county commissioners, our county sheriffs, in this authoritative regime that is ruling Denver. This is not a good look, folks. Most of the gun control bills that have been coming through this year have been targeting the FFLs, the gun shops. And by proxy, it affects us, the consumer. But this bill, yes, it should kind of strike fear into the hearts of the Colorado FFLs that potentially armed Gestapo bootjack thugs will show up from Denver into their store on a suspicion and arrest them. And until they can prove that they're innocent, they will be detained and facing a charge. Yes, they should be scared of that. But what really should piss people off about 1314 is the fact that they are going to usurp jurisdictional authority of our elected law enforcement agents. So make sure you're reaching out to the state legislator here in Colorado in full opposition of SB or House Bill 25, 1314. All right, I don't want to end on such an intense and negative point about what's going on here in the great state of Colorado, because if you're watching this and you don't live in Colorado, you need to be paying attention. Colorado is the canary in the coal mine, folks. We were a purplish red state less than 20 years ago, and it was a hostile takeover. I highly recommend that if you have not watched the movie, watch Rocky Mountain Heist. It is on YouTube. It's only 45 minutes long. It's a documentary explaining the book, The Blueprint, how Colorado was bought by the Democrats. And essentially, it will let you know how our state went from a purplish red state to a sapphire blue state in less than 2 decades, not organically, but by poli-science engineering of 3 millionaires and a billionaire who got together saying, we want to go ahead and push a social agenda into Colorado, and we are going to do it with our money. So make sure you're paying attention to what's going on in Colorado, because we are the canary in the coal mine, and what happens here can happen in your red or purple state. Don't believe me? Read the book, The Blueprint, or watch the movie Rocky Mountain Heist. And you need to harden up the defenses wherever you live. All right, but I don't want to just leave on such a negative note, folks. I want to have a little bit of fun with you, because I am a 2A enthusiast. I love my firearms. I have almost 40 years of shooting. I'm an expert marksman when it comes to sidearms and also small arms, which is rifles and shotguns. I'm a 9-year veteran, and how I got into this business was actually doing firearms reviews on YouTube. And recently, I've been working with a couple of companies, with MDT, Seekin, Steiner, also Ransom Rests, which is the firearm rest that you're seeing, which is the world's best rest. Not cheap. You buy it once, you cry once, and you'll have it for life, and you can pass it on to all your kids. But I'm working on a series to get down to 0.1 MOA accuracy. And a couple of weekends ago, I was at the range. I'll just go ahead and press play on this. And I actually shot 0.25 MOA accuracy group size with factory ammunition with my rig. You can see it right there. That's an MDT Elite chassis with a Steiner M7XI scope. And that is a Seekins Havoc Precision our Seekins Precision Havoc PH2 action and barrel, which is just the hunting rifle, barrel and action dropped into that chassis, and it's a fantastic rig, and I'm able to get incredibly small group sizes. But I just wanted to talk to you guys about how to identify what is going on with your firearm when something starts to go wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward. So when I call the target back, you can just see how small the group sizes are. I shot a .25 MOA group, which is literally a 1/4 inch, meaning one bullet hole goes here, and then I shoot 2 more bullets, and those 2 bullets can't be further away than a 1/4 inch than from the first bullet that I shot. And this is what it looks like right here. It's a pretty cool group, right? So that's impressive. Then the next weekend, you can see right here, it's .24 MOA. Then the next weekend, which was last week, and I went out to the range, and let's see, it's right here. I shot this group with the same ammunition. Not a great group. Not bad though, .75. And I was like, that's a little strange, because the very last group that I shot was .24. And then I ended up shooting a .63 group. I'm starting to notice this vertical stringing. And then we get into this group, and I'm shooting a 1.74. So now my group is opening up drastically with this vertical stringing, and I'm wondering what's going on. And then I shoot another group, and now I'm at 1.9 MOA. So I'm at like 2 inches with vertical stringing, and I'm seeing the same pattern. And then I shoot my very last group with the exact same ammunition that I shot at the beginning of my range. And I shot a .75, and this was a 1.6 MOA in that same vertical pattern. And I'm going, what is going on, right? What's going on with this rifle? I mean, this is a very expensive build. Shoot, if you were to purchase everything, we're looking at probably about $8,000-9,000 for this whole rig. And the weekend before this, I was shooting literally, bullet group sizes that were this big, and now I'm shooting groups like this. So I figured it was probably some of my action screws, or maybe my scope rings or cross bolt screws weren't tightened down tight enough. So this week I made sure everything was tightened down to spec, and surprisingly, it was. The action screws were just a hair loose for the 65 inch-pounds required for the chassis, but nothing that would have caused this. So I'm wondering what the hell's going on. So I went back out to the range today, and I shot this group, folks. This is a 4-inch group of vertical stringing. And so after making sure all of my screws were torqued to spec, and I'm seeing this vertical stringing, the only thing that I can think of is that the spring that's inside of my scope that deals with the elevation travel has somehow snapped or detached. And so I'm going to have to send the optic back in. So that's what I'm going to be doing this week. Is on Monday, I will be shipping the optic, the Steiner, back to Steiner, which is located up here in Colorado, up in Greeley, Colorado. They have a fantastic warranty, and I'm going to be putting my old Leopold VX6 HD onto this rig and taking it to the range this week to see if I can actually get some good group sizes. If I get good group sizes with that scope on the rifle, then I know that it was the optic, right? If I'm still getting bad group sizes, that means it's not the optic. Steiner can send it back to me, but I will have to definitely figure out what's going on with the rig. But I got a pretty good feeling that it's going to end up being the optic, and hopefully Steiner will be able to fix that quickly and get it back to me, because it's fantastic. It is a world famous or world quality scope when it comes to optics and glass. So folks, thank you for joining me here on the Big Timber Lodge. I mean, you guys are awesome. I love my chat. Just want to say thank you guys for stopping by and joining me on X America News, Rumble, Kick, and also my X platform as well. I will be back next Saturday. I might be picking up a couple more slots, but I'm going to be bringing you that news about what's going on here in Colorado. And so you can be made aware of what you need to be looking for in your state, because once again, we are the canary on the coal mine. And as always, Colorado, let's get to work.